What are the craziest declassified CIA documents? The plan after 9/11 to make figurines that look like Osama bin Laden and give them to kids in South Asia. After it's left in the sun for a certain amount of time, its face would peel off to reveal a demon-like visage with red skin, green eyes, and black markings, basically a demon. The objective was to scare kids and their parents so bin Laden and Al-Qaeda would lose support. The acoustic kitty is pretty crazy. Declassified CIA docs linked at bottom of Wikipedia page. https://en.wikipedia.org/wiki/acoustic_kitty question WPROV equals SFLA1. They basically put a microphones and radio and a cat and tried to release into the Soviet embassy to wander around eavesdropping since nobody suspects a wandering cat. Technical difficulties. Citation needed episode. https://youtu.be/GCR Junior 9XQSAE question C equals 0ZR0ICN4WOC new 5Q that I learned about it from the Pentagon Papers, which were leaked, not outright declassified, and the resultant Church Committee report. These are what made public the CIA's actions in overthrowing governments and instigating assisting coups all over the world for decades leading up to the 70s. Pretty much every negative stereotype of the CIA we have today was created or informed by the Pentagon Papers and Church Committee report. Psychological warfare in the Philippines in the 1950s comes to mind. The CIA conducted research to figure out which sort of myths and superstitions the Philippine people had. They discovered that they were afraid of vampires. At one point, they disrupted a group by snatching a local man, murdering him, and putting teeth marks on his neck. They then hung him upside down for his friends to find, which terrified the village. This was all part of an effort to elect Ramon Magsaysay as president, who basically acted as a puppet for the US. The CIA wrote his speeches and directed his policy. The pardon of the Japanese who ran Unit 731 in exchange for their findings. They performed countless experiments on live human POWs, cutting off limbs to test blood loss, injecting them with diseases and seeing how they progressed when left untreated, vivisection of these same individuals, and other really fucking disgusting stuff that I don't have the stomach to type out. You can Google the rest. The US government felt it was more important to have that information in American hands than to let it go to the Russians, or be lost. You'd never be able to conduct those kind of experiments again, and for good reason, so they considered it the lesser of two evils. Operation Sea Spray. https://en.wikipedia.org/wiki/operation_C-spray. A 1950 U.S. Navy secret biological warfare experiment in which Serodium arcescens and Bacillus colbigii bacteria were sprayed over the San Francisco Bay Area in California, in order to determine how vulnerable a city like San Francisco may be to a bioweapon attack. Between 1949 and 1969, open-air tests of biological agents were conducted 239 times. In 80 of those experiments, the Army said it used live bacteria that its researchers at the time thought were harmless. Project Paperclip, taking former Nazi scientists from Germany to America to hopefully beat the Soviets in the space race. One of the craziest declassified CIA documents is Operation Midnight Climax, where the CIA dosed unsuspecting individuals with LSD as part of mind control experiments. It reads like a spy novel, but unfortunately, it's a disturbing chapter in history. MKUltra, but unfortunately the only documents we got from it are from an off-site storage space that the officials in the CIA forgot about. Also, the CIA document that says the political structure of the USSR wasn't one man one rule, or the one talking about how Tibet was a feudal backwater. CIA checking what we know. Probably that the US government worked with the company Chiquita Banana to assassinate South American leaders they didn't like to replace them with more agreeable ones that would allow the company to take control of so much of the country and in return would supply the USA with resources. all the failed assassination attempts against Fidel Castro. According to Fabian Escalante, who worked for the Cuban counterintelligence, there were 638 of them. Here are some highlights. In 1960, they tried to poison his cigars. They asked the Chicago mob for help and they said poison pills are the best. The CIA gave them to someone close to Castro, who gave them to an ice cream parlor employee who was supposed to slip them into Castro's ice cream. The box of poison pills was later found frozen in the icebox. They planned to put explosives under a painted seashell, as Castro loved to go scuba diving and collect seashells. The plan was discarded as impractical. In the same year they contaminated a scuba diving suit for Castro with a fungus that should give Castro a deadly disease. The person tasked with this, American lawyer James Donovan, who was negotiating the release of hostages after the Bay of Pigs invasion, couldn't do it in the end. They trained his lover to poison him, but she got cold feet. They had a James Bond-like idea of poisoning him with a tiny needle attached to a ballpoint pen. He would have been poisoned if he clicked the pen. The plan was rejected as not sophisticated enough. Last but not least, they had the idea to assassinate his character by spraying LSD-like chemical into the broadcasting studio where he held his speeches. The idea was to make him look confused and unfit to rule. The plan was abandoned as the chemical was unreliable. My previous answer to another post. https://www.theblackvault.com/ Not sure if this has been mentioned or not. I'm not scrolling through a million replies. The site is run by a guy named John Greenwald. Black Vault started putting in FOIA requests when he was 15 and never stopped. Currently has what is arguably the largest privately owned collection of declassified information from the US government anywhere, and the entire archive is accessible for free. Not a direct answer to your question, but anything you want to know about stuff the US government was up to can be found buried in there, and he's taken the time to sort some of the more interesting stuff out to make browsing easier. Cheers! The papers describing astral projection. They brought a psychic in and placed an envelope with coordinates and a time frame on it. They asked him to describe what he saw. He described a dying planet where people had left to discover a new place they could populate. It was revealed that the envelope contained coordinates on Mars in the distant past. It gets much more in depth where he describes large structures, etc. It's not very long and very much worth the read. Edit. https://www.cia.gov/reading room/docs/cia-rdp96-00788R001900001-9.pdf. The Tuskegee Experiments. One of the craziest declassified CIA documents is the Stargate Project, which focused on psychic phenomena like remote viewing. Another intriguing one is Operation Acoustic Kitty, where the CIA attempted to use cats as listening devices by implanting them with microphones. These documents shed light on some of the bizarre and unconventional tactics employed by the CIA during the Cold War era. MKUltra, the mind control operation. U.S. military advisors saying that an armed conflict in Vietnam can't be won due to the general sentiment and freedom movement they'd fight. That the Vietnamese liberation movement would continue no matter what or who would actually end up leading it. Second being Nixon sabotaging and delaying peace talks in Vietnam so he could blame it as LBJ's failure and win the election. Northwoods documents, Operation Northwoods, Wikipedia. https://en.wikipedia.org/wiki/operation_Northwoods. The CIA examining the pole shifts causing great cyclical catastrophes. https://www.cia.gov/reading room/docs/cia-rdp79b00752a00030003001-8.pdf.